Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 312. Wow, what a great time. What a great time to be alive. I'm just loading up my paper. I've got quite a bit of notes. Let's see. Actually, no, 4 pages. Not too unusual. Anyway, hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. So, chapter 312. Well, general note, of course. The first thing I need to say is good on Izuku. I really, last time I was leaning more towards Izuku being wrong on this one, but he was right. So, congrats. Looks like their plan worked out. They all predicted All for One well, who in turn predicted them well. All good stuff. Izuku's got a good. I think overall, really, I think this chapter was pretty good on detailing Izuku's thought process. And really, for me, the biggest assumption was assuming that Nagant was a person working for All for One, but as we saw, it worked out. Now, I do think the weird details, that being Shizaki and all that, I think the author did, like, he clearly put effort into addressing why Shizaki is still here. But I do find it funny that the one new character we saw from Tartarus seems to be the only character of note. And I find it funny that she brings along Overhaul, a person who Izuku legitimately invoked in the previous chapter along with Muscular and Stain. Like, if you were to say that this woman is a mechanism by which to bring Izuku and Overhaul together, I don't think you would be wrong. And I don't think no one would be able to argue against you if you wanted to say that. Because at the end of the day, the weird parts here are the fact that Shizaki is with her, and even when it comes to how she justifies it, the justification isn't fully strong, and I think I'll point that out. I think I have it later in the notes, but regardless, we got the All for One solution, which was the easiest solution in terms of justifying why they'd be going after Izuku specifically. And then we have like the justifications of, well, Lady Nagant doesn't, she just brought him along. Anyway, one thing I want to say before going further into the general notes as well is the spoilers. The chapter is way more detailed than the spoilers made it sound. So this chapter was really good. Like, reading all the little details really addressed a lot of questions I had from the spoilers. And that makes it very worthwhile. And it definitely makes me think, like, yeah, this is why we don't take spoilers too seriously. Anyway, next general note is Lady Nagant and my general impressions of her. Art-wise, I think she looks amazing. I think in both iterations of the character that we see in this chapter, she looks pretty amazing. Now, one thing though, and maybe this is just me, and I'm getting fatigued, and I would love to hear your opinion, but I'm pretty done with anti-society villains. People that don't like the society. Like, the moment she said phony, I was just, I don't care anymore. I get it. I get that a good chunk of the villains are anti-society, but at the end of the day, there's only so many different flavors of anti-society that you have, and a good chunk of the anti-society people are crazy. They're so crazy that really their plight, they've kind of disqualified any kind of rational response that they could be given. To some degree, I like Muscular a little bit more than Lady Nagant on the first impression, and I'm saying first impression because very likely that Lady Nagant is going to have more things come up later. But just to continue on my thought here, it's just from my perspective, you have Shigaraki on one side of the spectrum, and Shigaraki represents like nihilistic anti-society. Like, Shigaraki wants to destroy everything. He doesn't necessarily want order. And then you have All for One on the other side. And All for One's a little bit more complicated, which is appreciated legitimately, because his anti-society is that he's anti-society of, or I guess he's anti-current society, right? All for One himself isn't anti-society because he wants to rule over a society. He can't be the Demon King without a kingdom to rule. So All for One at least has much more interesting nuance in the fact that he wants a society that he once had. He wants to take things back to the way they were when he was the kingpin, when everyone was being his friend, everyone wanted power, everyone liked the power dealings that he was doing. That's what he wants to do. He wants to go back to his glory days. So then you have Lady Nagant coming in here, and what you ultimately see is like, okay, she has a bone to pick with society. Most likely it's going to be justified, and I think I have notes acknowledging that later, but at the same time, it's like, the moment that you throw your lot in with All for One, the vision of society that you have, automatically it's just not that interesting anymore. And the reason for that is there's two type of people. It's people that want to live in a different society, and then there's people that want to rule a society. And naturally, All For One's one of the rulers, and he's much more interesting. Once you throw your lot in with him, you're pretty much throwing in your lot for a society that the world has already seen, and that being the society that Vigilantes rose up in to take down All For One. That's the society that second user, third user, like that succession of people, they lived in that society and they changed it. And so with Nagant here, she's not like on this initial run for me. It's not doing anything because I don't think I'm going to get any kind of unique view from her in regards to society that I haven't seen before. And because she's already thrown her lot in with All For One, it's like, all right, great, a follower. Mind you, is there a potential Lady Nagant might betray All For One later on because she wants a slightly different society? I sure hope so. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think she's capable of betraying All For One. Like, I'm sure she's capable of trying, but I don't think she's going to succeed. At the end of the day, when you see what he did here, All For One knew what she wanted, and then he played around with power dynamics and gets her to do a tough job. This is All For One's MO. It wasn't even that hard. They were just talking surrounded by fire, and he got it going. He just gave her a quirk, and she's like, all right, I'll do it. Yeah, no. One thing I ultimately take away from this is like Nagant is set up to fail. Even if she does take out Izuku, she's set up to fail. Which leads me to what I think could happen in the future. So, you know, at the end of the chapter, Nagant's going into the sky and Izuku's approaching her. I'm assuming she wants to shoot at him from above. Like, she wants to turn it into that kind of fight, which might be really interesting. In that case, though, you know, second user seems to have something related to throwing projectiles, given the gauntlets he used to have. I wonder if this is going to turn into a projectile v projectile fight. But in terms of what I'm thinking for the future, I think Izuku and Shizaki are going to have a moment where they chat. Don't know exactly how it happens. Does it happen after Izuku gets captured? Don't know. Will someone come to save Izuku? Well, Nagant's a hero trader, and she's also talking about phonies. I wouldn't be surprised if Stain showed up, but that might be a little bit hard. I mean, like, Best Jeanist might be also on the way. I feel like Izuku's going to get bodied. I feel like this is going to be a fight showing Izuku's weaknesses. It's going to have him struggle a little bit. I mean, we're already seeing him struggle a bit with the reaction time. Do I think he's going to get bodied and lose? It kind of depends. Depends on how many secret... It depends on who surprises the other more, I think. Like, Izuku, I could see him having trouble for a little bit. And then, you know, just turning up 100% and being able to win. I could totally see that happening. Like, yeah, he'll have to sacrifice a little bit of his body to do it, but I could see it happening. Overall, this does seem like it's going to be technical skill. It's going to be skill versus skill at this point. But if Izuku is able to use 100% at the perfect time, I think he could get the victory. So I think the style for the fight is going to be showing difficulty, but then letting Izuku get the win towards the end. With the possibility of someone coming in to help him. Now, the thing with Stain is that this is the Shizaki moment. I feel like we're going to get more Shizaki here than Stain. I'm not sure how exactly Shizaki might play into this, but I do hope we get to have a conversation between Izuku and Shizaki at some later point. We'll have to see. Is this going to be the moment where Nagant bodies Izuku, or is this going to be where we get a... we get to see what exactly Izuku's challenges are going to be in the future. Anyway, that's the general notes. Let's walk into the page by page. Page 1. Cool to see Hawks and Izuku talking. It was just a cool atmosphere to see them in the hospital. Anyway, on this page, this was a really good start page because we got to know that Garaki's compounds were all rated. Wonderful. I did find it kind of funny that the image that they used of one of Garaki's compounds, that was from the villain arc, so that's not an image that heroes necessarily saw, but whatever. I'm pretty sure anyway. Moving on, this page serves to tell us why Izuku needs to be taken alive and captured. So this was a really good justification page and really good on the author. Again, I cannot praise him enough. He put in a lot of details, and I really appreciate that because it ultimately made it a lot. One thing I will say though is that with the details, that final third or that final quarter of the page where Hawks is talking about Lady Nagant, I'm just thinking, this is the page that says, hey readers, you only need to worry about this one person. Is that a misdirect or is that true? I think it's true, but it might be a misdirect. Page 2 is the hype up and intro page for Lady Nagant, or leading into it. Hawks tells us they used to work together. And honestly, at this point, I'm actually kind of thinking that she might be part of the reason that that Hawks wants heroes to have more free time. Because right now I'm kind of reading her as a bit of someone who worked too much. And honestly, given the place they worked for, this is the place that asked Hawks to do some questionable things. Yeah, I feel like this is a lady that saw too much. Did too much, saw too much. Page 3, great shot of Nagant. Question though, how does she see that Izuku moved from 1 kilometer away with no scope? In the dark. That's a lot. Now I don't know what's going on with that capability, but like here's a zoom in of her eye just to show you that it is kind of slightly drawn differently. Also on this page, note how her stand gets pulled in. It's pretty cool. Page 4, we see... page 4 is the page where we see what I assume that laser beam is Izuku running away. I'm pretty sure. But that's not really that big of a deal. On this page, we also see a car while Izuku is narrating. That might be Best Jeanist and the crew because they didn't get blown up. But it's kind of hard to say. Anyway, here the author says something that there's no way to send the message out. And again, like that, love that. I think that's tight. Although, at this point, I would say... anti-villain precaution number 1. Carry 2 means of communication. This would be a great time to have a pager hidden on your person or in your utility belt. I mean, doctors still use pagers because ultimately they're reliable. But yeah, page 5. Izuku is actually retreating. Love that. I think his rationale for this stage was good. I love that he's not being arrogant. This is you have no idea. One of my big concerns is Izuku's judgment, especially with him being sleep deprived. But that was a good choice at that moment in time, and I love that Izuku went for it. Anyway, on page 5 we see the bullet in the Nagant shot from page 4 curving to danger sense Izuku. Page 6, Izuku gets wicked shot. He's even saying something about how a howitzer shot is nothing compared to this. So that's just Izuku hyping up Lady Nagant again. This is one of the pages that really makes me feel like Lady Nagant's going to be a little bit of a challenge because the author is doing so much to hype her up. Anyway, on this page you also see that Izuku gets hit a second time. One thing to note is Nagant's expression when she shoots, because there is a little comparison later on. Page 8 is another hype page for Nagant, while also explaining Snipe's quirk, and this is a page where I have questions. So let's go through it. First, Snipe says that his quirk is a homing quirk that lets him target anything within 600 meters that he can see. That's cool. Then he says it works with anything he tosses, which is like, okay. But then he says he can't pick what part of the target he hits, and they don't pack a wallop, which makes sense because it's a toss. Okay, so this is just another instance of weird quirk shenanigans in terms of how they work and why they work. So I'm going to go into Snipe's quirk here real quick. What's logically important to note is that Snipe's quirk, for whatever reason, recognizes that something can be part of a whole. What that is to say is that if he's aiming for Shigaraki, for instance, Shigaraki's entire body, by the definition of this quirk, would be fair game. He says it himself. He can't pick what part of the target he hits. And the big thing here is that we don't know what exactly constitutes part. So this is what makes this, I think, kind of stupid just as written, right? If there's a bullseye painted on a billboard, and that bullseye takes, let's say, 1/25th of the space up, Snipe would still most likely miss because there's 24 parts of that billboard that he might still hit. But if that same bullseye is cut out from the billboard and thrown into the air, doesn't that mean that he's going to hit it 100% of the time? Even though the size of the bullseye itself hasn't changed? Now mind you, this might not be how it works, but the rules as written here are just kind of ridiculous. If you can't pick what part of the target you hit, how the heck does the quirk decide what a part of the target is? You guys get what I'm attacking here? What happens, for instance, if Shigaraki's hand, and I mean one of his real hands, is a target? Does it say, oh, you're aiming for his hand? Oh, you might hit the rest of the body. Or let's go to another example. What if it's one of the hands on Shigaraki's face? If he's aiming for specifically the hand on Shigaraki's face, does the quirk go like, oh, that hand is a part of Shigaraki's body, therefore it might hit anywhere on Shigaraki's body. What if he has a gun? Oh, that gun, it's part of Shigaraki's body. You might hit everything else but the gun, right? How does the quirk distinguish what is a part of the target and what isn't? To make matters worse, Homing in the Viz translation says anything, whereas the fan translation says anybody. So you can tell how much of a distinction that becomes. Now, I think this is an absolutely horrendous and arbitrary distinction that is made to balance the quirk. That makes one question how the quirk itself picks and chooses what is part of a target. But the good thing is that we probably will never have any kind of real example of Snipe's quirk moving forward. So we'll never have to worry about how this actually works, because it's only here to build up this girl. Anyway, the value of Snipe telling us his quirk is that Snipe says that his homing component, specifically the hitting of the target, Nagant can do that with pure skill. I mean, that's what's said here when he says, she can pull off what my quirk does with raw skill alone. Which suggests that when we see the bullets curving, that Izuku can't dodge, those are happening without a quirk controlling the trajectory in real time. If we take what Snipe is saying literally, the most her quirk adds are like aerodynamic properties early on before it gets before the bullet goes out. And this is all again given the wording of what Snipe is saying. Now on page 9, I just want to add, look at her expression compared to earlier, very different, right? I feel like her current self kinda disillusioned compared to where she used to be. Page 10, Izuku's gauntlets broke, and then Izuku hypes her up. Izuku acknowledges danger sense saved him. Izuku applies extreme intelligence here and analysis, which I honestly thought was really good, and figures out she's a kilometer away. Izuku gives a good enough reason to why it's better to approach than run, citing the distances, and when math gets involved, and it's a simple greater than, less than, I agree. Page 11, we start focusing on Shizaki and her. First, her arm has this aura again, and we see Shizaki obsessed with the boss, but somehow being unable to move. She must have beaten him down. Page 12, I think, was a really cute page for Nagant and Shizaki. Like, I mean, if they end up together, I won't be upset. Not saying I ship it, though, but it's cute. Anyway, details. First panel, Nagant saying she'll help Shizaki with her arm glowing. Now I have to really question, if you're telling him to hide, why did you not lock him up in a storage closet and like just lock away the key? I'm sure you could find a storage closet, like wherever you found those canisters you have at your hips and that cool outfit, you could probably find a storage locker to hide him in. Shizaki looks pretty lame. He could probably fit in a locker pretty alright. Also, at this point, I sincerely want to know, in 4 Coma style maybe, what the life of these two was like for these last few days, because I'm absolutely amazed that this lady couldn't find the time to get him a coat. Like, come on, he's gonna get pneumonia. How come you get to suit up and poor Shizaki doesn't get to wear some fur? Come on. Anyway, this is where you really hope for a spin-off. Anyway, second panel, she wonders if she could have ditched Shizaki. At that point, I need to shout out the livestream crew. I don't recall who exactly said it, so I'll say thanks to a bunch of people. White Despair, Random Trainer X, Miguel, Jason, Ta. It's probably one of them. But yeah, this instance of her helping Shizaki at the prison might be based on the idea that Dobby promoted that heroes just can't help but help people in need. So that heroic impulse, like maybe she has a bit of a messiah complex as well. But regardless, I thought it was nice how she was helping him. Out. That's really neat. Anyway, All For One approaches Nagant, and again her arm is glowing. Now honestly, it seems that this arm glow was Horikoshi's misdirect. At this time, I'm thinking the arm glow just means her rifle is ready to come out at any moment, given how simple the quirk itself seems. Like from what we understand right now, the quirk is just flat out a rifle out of the arm and special bullets and a whole lot of skill. And maybe a weird eye. Anyway, here we find out that Nagant is a traitor to the heroes. And I know people are really hoping that Nagant's going to be a good person and all that, but if she's willing to shoot a kid, and if she's willing to work with All For One, I think she's given up her good person card. Page 13, Nagant mentions that she was once upon a time after All For One. All For One makes a distinction between Nagant and the villains, following suit from Hawks. Next panel, we have All For One saying he expects Izuku to leave, which is really just saying that Izuku's side was right in predicting that All For One would be right in sending someone for Izuku. Anyway, the bottom third is there specifically to justify why it took so long for this girl to come after Izuku. So good on Horikoshi. The big conditions being All For One suggested a rainy day, so that makes sense. I do think it's still incredible this lady found Izuku, but whatever. One last thing I love though is the body language. So when we were first introduced to the character, I remember making a note about this gesture. So yeah, you know, seeing that she definitely seems like the kind of person that has a bit of a laziness streak, or a more I don't want to work too much streak in her, and which I also think leads to Hawk's philosophy. It was cool to see. I'm glad the pain in the neck gesture actually led to a character that questions why she has to work so much. because that's usually what that gesture implies. Page 14 is one of those pages. We find out Nagant killed another hero, and at this point, you know, it could be simple in that it's exactly how it sounds. She killed a hero, or complex in that there's a bigger story. Now, again, Nagant worked for the scummiest agency that we've seen, the Safety Commission. And, you know, she's also using stain rhetoric here, so imagine, it wouldn't be that hard to imagine that the hero she killed might have been crooked. We've seen crooked heroes before, it can happen, it was in the Liberation Army. It's not out of the realm of the possibility that Nagant got super burned by the work she was doing, by the people she worked for, or the people she worked with, and then that led to her getting disillusioned. That would not be that strange, all things considered. Or she could just be a person that just... Actually, yeah, there's no way of looking at this. The Public Safety Commission is the one responsible here. I'm pretty sure. Those guys are so scummy. Anyway, last third, a weird thing. All for One recognizes Shizaki, which is one of the big question marks I still have. I have no idea why All for One wouldn't take this quirk. At this point, though, I have to assume it's either negligence or Shizaki's quirk is a little bit more complicated to use than we thought, or All for One has other plans or something. I will wait for the author to give me the justification. Anyway, the next bit had a lot of contention when it came to the spoilers because it implied that Shizaki was a victim of Hero Society. And at that point, it's just like, let's just remember, the Yakuza are a criminal organization that are villains in the sense that their criminal organization was pushed to extinction because people got good at stopping the Yakuza from being dicks. And then within that organization, you had Shizaki, who even the boss of said organization said, yo bro, you're a little bit too much. Shizaki is a victim in the sense that he was a bad person who got legitimately punished for being a bad person. This is not a victim. This is justice. If we want to play the game and say who's the bigger victim of the Yakuza, it most certainly isn't Shizaki. It's Shizaki's boss, who Shizaki is currently trying to reach, but is somehow really failing. That said, I'm not sure it's Shizaki being referred to here. Check this out. Look at the thought bubble border for this one, and then check out the thought bubbles border, the speech bubbles border for this one. First, this implies that it's All for One speaking, and not Nagant. And then here, with the change of the speech bubbles quality in of itself, it implies that you should read these sequentially. So for instance, another victim kept down by this wicked hero society. Let us deliver a death blow to those hateful heroes. Consider this a contract between us. Now, my thing is I want to know who exactly is the victim that All for One is talking to. So if you switch around the names a bit, if you go like Lady Nagant, kept down by this wicked hero society. Let us deliver a death blow to those hateful heroes. Consider this a contract between us. And if you switch it to Shizaki, Shizaki kept down by this wicked hero society. Let us deliver a death blow to those hateful heroes. It's that let us, right? It doesn't really feel like he's speaking to Shizaki, but this is based on English sensibilities, and it, you know, a minor translation error might break this whole thing. Speaking of translation, the fan translations changed the line to make the line aim specifically at Shizaki, so maybe there's some extra context that comes in from Japanese. Anyway, you know, depending on the specific nuance of the original Japanese, the target of the line right now could go either way. But one thing that I think is clear, even if we ignore that this line might have been directed at either or of them. And honestly, All for One is the only person I think that would use wicked in this context. This is classic All for One using pretty words to paint himself as a victim, because that's how All for One likes to look, right? He likes to look like he's the nice guy, when it's like, no, you're really not. You kill a lot of people, man. Regardless, if it's All for One saying these lines, it's like there's no point in listening to him, because this guy, words are the weapons by which he manipulates people. Everything he says is practically a lie, or has a double meaning, or is just being said to get someone on his side. Anyway, All for One gave Nagant airwalk. Good that she's not insane or dumb, and that pretty much opens the way for Dabi to one day get a second quirk. And finally, we go on to the last page where she's using airwalk, which is pretty neat. And here is the bravest thing about her. She's wearing a skirt while flying. I can just imagine how awkward this is going to be if Izuku gets right underneath her. Good thing he's not Mineta, because if this was Mineta loses the fight immediately. Regardless, Nagant is a braver lady than me for sure. But otherwise, yeah, that was Hero Academia chapter 312. Going into the future, I am curious how this is going to work out into Izuku talking to Shizaki. And in terms of what I really feel confident about, I feel like for next chapter, I wouldn't be surprised if Izuku struggles for half the chapter, honestly. Now, Nagant also said that she thinks that Shizaki could be useful for something later. And she even puts in that somehow, and it's like this. So, you know, sometimes, somehow, these are pretty weak words that are just really there to kind of gloss over something. And in this case, like, she's glossing over that she doesn't really know what exactly he could do that will be helpful to her. So this opens up to just, it's an in the moment thing, right? And it just kind of like repaints that she doesn't have really good ideas as to why she's helping Shizaki, which might be speaking to her heroic nature. But yeah, aside from that, I really just think Izuku's going to have a tough time here. I mean, this woman has so much experience and technical ability, but Izuku has 8 quirks in him. So really, he should be able to put up some degree of a fight. So we'll have to see what exactly happens next week. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. I think I'm going to call it there. And till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.